Welcome, the Northman Coaching Podcast with Gary and AJ. Thanks for tuning in. Building a better you, shoulder to shoulder, brick by brick. Let's go.
Good evening and welcome to the Northman Coaching Podcast. I'm your host, Gary, and tonight we are going to be discussing the core value of awareness. So awareness is the things that we miss while looking everywhere else. Most people don't lose themselves all at once. They drift. One ignored feeling, one avoided truth, one repeated distraction at a time. And the dangerous part, you can be busy, productive, surrounded by people, and still be completely unaware what's really happening inside of you.
As I sit here, feeling somewhat like a prisoner serving his sentence, I can't help but think about the past, or the future for that matter. Hey, I'm human. At least I think I am. People give you tons of advice or their opinions about certain situations, and they make sense, or like the old saying goes, easier said than done.
But before we get into this, I want to talk about my friend Joel Rosario and his book that came out last year called May, December End, The Ballad of Joey Flowers. It was hands down the best read I had in 2025. And this book is available on Amazon Kindle, Barnes & Noble, Nook, and is also available at a bookstore in Kenosha, Wisconsin called Studio Moonfall. So grab this book from anywhere on the internet, or if you're in Wisconsin, check out that bookstore. But this book is his journal or his diary, whatever you want to call it, that helped him get through some of the hardest times in his life and help him understand what was going on and get through it. And he was gracious enough and vulnerable enough to share that with the world. So grab the book. Like I said, one of the best reads of 2025. So now let's get back into this. So tonight we're going to talk about awareness, not information, not intelligence, but awareness. There is something strange about being human. We can see the world and still miss what matters. You can wake up, you can go to work, answer messages, pay bills, laugh with friends, scroll through memories, make plans for tomorrow, and still be completely disconnected from ourselves. Not because we're broken, not because we're incapable, but because awareness is not automatic. And somewhere along the way, many of us stopped paying attention, not to the world, but to what was happening within us. Because life gets loud, responsibilities get loud, fear gets loud, and pain gets loud. And distraction may be louder than all of it. So we keep moving. We tell ourselves that we're fine. We convince ourselves we'll deal with it later. And maybe later never actually comes. Maybe that's why some people wake up one day and barely recognize the life that they have built. Not because they made one catastrophic decision, but because they slowly drifted away from awareness. Tonight, I want to talk about that drift, about the things we miss while looking everywhere else, about the truths that whisper before they scream, about the awareness, because maybe awareness is where healing begins. You know what I've noticed? That most people think awareness means paying attention, but awareness is deeper than attention. Attention notices. Awareness understands. Attention sees movement. Awareness sees meaning. Attention hears words. Awareness hears what is underneath the words, and there is a difference. You can pay attention to somebody and still miss them. You can hear someone and still not understand them. You can even look in the mirror and still not really see yourself. That is the danger, because awareness is not simply eyesight, it's insight. And sometimes life starts sending signals long before life sends consequences. The problem is, many of us have become experts at ignoring signals. Maybe because the truth is uncomfortable, maybe because slowing down is uncomfortable, maybe because if we become aware, then we might have to change something. And change can be frightening. So we stay busy. Busy has become the modern anesthesia. Busy keeps us sitting with difficult questions. Busy keeps us from examining pain. Busy lets us postpone honesty. And if we're not careful, we start making mistakes. We start mistaking movement for progress. Have you ever noticed how easy it is to become productive without being present? That's a dangerous place, because a man can build a career while neglecting his peace. He can provide for everybody else while starving emotionally. He can smile publicly while privately feeling lost. And that is the scary part right there. Sometimes nobody knows, not his friends, not family, sometimes not even him. Because when awareness fades, autopilot takes over. And autopilot feels normal. You wake up, you do the routine. You repeat the routine. You survive the routine. Maybe years go by before you ask yourself a question that should have been asked a long time ago. How did I get here? The truth, most people do not get lost overnight. They drift. One ignored feeling, one avoided conversation, one compromised boundary, one repeated distraction, one buried truth. And eventually, they lose connection with themselves. Not suddenly, quietly. That's why awareness matters, because awareness interrupts the drift. Awareness slows us down enough to ask, what am I feeling? What am I avoiding? What am I repeating? What truth am I refusing to face? Those are not comfortable questions, but healing rarely begins with comfort. Healing usually begins with honesty, and honesty requires awareness. So I think about this a lot. How many warning signs exist in our lives before something finally breaks? Relationships, health, faith, identity. The signs are usually there, but whispers are easy to ignore. And people often ignore whispers until life starts shouting. Sometimes awareness sounds like a quiet inner voice saying, this doesn't feel right. This isn't healthy. I'm not okay. This relationship is changing. I'm exhausted. I'm pretending. And sometimes we silence that voice, not because it's wrong, but because it's inconvenient. Because awareness carries responsibility. Once you see clearly, you have to make a decision. And maybe that is why awareness scares people, because blindness gives temporary comfort, but clarity asks something more from us. There's a phrase that I keep coming back to. Life whispers before it screams. And I believe that. Yeah, I have seen it too many times not to believe it. A marriage whispers before it breaks. A body whispers before it collapses. A spirit whispers before it feels empty. And awareness is learning to hear the whispers, not living paranoid, not living fearful, just awake. And I wonder, how many of us have been giving truth already, but we just weren't? I think one of the hardest truths to accept is that awareness can hurt. Not because awareness is harmful, but because clarity removes excuses. And sometimes we would rather stay comfortable than become honest. But you cannot heal what you refuse to see. You cannot rebuild what you refuse to acknowledge. And you cannot grow beyond what you pretend is not there. And the cost is rarely immediate. That makes it dangerous. Life usually doesn't collapse all at once. It erodes quietly, gradually, almost politely. A relationship rarely fails in a single moment. Usually there are signs. It's distance, it's resentment, disconnection, words that were left unsaid, needs left unspoken, effort slowly fading. But many people miss the signs because they stop paying attention. Or maybe they don't notice. Maybe they do notice, but they don't want to believe what they are seeing. And if we're honest, we've all done that. We ignore red flags. We minimize pain. We rationalize dysfunction. We tell ourselves it's probably nothing. Things will work themselves out. I'm overthinking. But awareness is not overthinking. Awareness is just observation. And observation can save us from unnecessary suffering. The same thing happens with ourselves. How many people are exhausted, but call it being busy? How many people are lonely, but call it independence? How many people are hurting, but call it strength? We become skilled at rebranding pain. And eventually, we stop asking deeper questions. But awareness asks. Awareness notices patterns, because patterns tell stories. And patterns do not lie. If conflict follows you everywhere, there may be something to examine. If peace feels unfamiliar, there may be something unresolved. If you keep repeating the same relationship, the same heartbreak, the same self-sabotage, awareness invites you to ask why. Not with shame, but with honesty. Because shame says, something is wrong with me. Awareness says, something needs my attention. This is a very different conversation. And I want to speak to the men listening for a moment. Because awareness and masculinity do not oppose each other. In fact, real masculine leadership depends on awareness. A strong man is not simply physically capable. He's awake. He notices, he observes, he learns, pays attention, not because he's controlling, but because he is present. I think sometimes men are taught the wrong lessons. They're taught to be tough, but not reflective, not decisive, or decisive, but not emotionally aware. Either way, maybe it's strong, but disconnected. And that creates problems because emotional blindness does not make a man stronger. It usually makes him more reactive. And reaction is different than a response. Reaction is automatic. Response is aware. Reaction is driven by impulse. Response is guided by understanding. And leadership lives in response. A man who lacks awareness reacts to everything: criticism, stress, fear, conflict. His emotions drive the vehicle. But a grounded man, he pauses. He leads the room. He notices energy. He pays attention to timing. He listens before speaking, not because he is weak, but because he understands something powerful. Presence creates influence. I have learned this the hard way. Sometimes the strongest thing a man can do is pause long enough to understand what is actually happening. Not what his fear says, not what his pride says, and not what his anger says, but what reality says. Because ego clouds awareness and pride can make us blind. We defend ourselves too quickly. We assume too quickly. We judge too quickly. And when ego is driving, awareness usually leaves the room. That's why humility matters. Humility is not weakness. Humility is openness. It says, I may not see everything clearly yet, but that mindset changes lives because awareness grows where humility lives. I once heard something that stayed with me. A man does not lead because he controls the room. He leads because he sees the room. I believe that. And I truly, truly believe that. The father who notices his child withdrawing, the husband who senses emotional distance, the friend who recognizes pain hiding behind humor, the leader who sees moral shifting. The awareness matters because leadership is not domination. Leadership is stewardship. And stewardship requires attentiveness. It also requires observation and it requires care. That is awareness. And I would be missing something important if we didn't talk about spiritual awareness, because awareness is not only emotional, it's spiritual too. Scripture says, be watchful, stand firm. Be watchful, not fearful. Watchful, aware, and discernment, they all matter. Not everything influencing your life deserves access to your spirit. Not every voice deserves authority. And not every environment produces peace. And spiritual awareness asks difficult questions. What am I feeding my mind? What am I allowing into my heart? What strengthens me? What weakens me? What brings me closer to God? And what slowly pulls me away? Those are the questions, because drift does not only happen emotionally, it happens spiritually too. Spiritual drift often begins quietly. Prayer becomes occasional. Conviction becomes negotiable. Peace becomes harder to find. And little by little, distance grows. Not because God moved, but because awareness faded. I think spiritual awareness is less about perfection and more about attentiveness, staying awake, guarding your peace, protecting what matters, and remembering that awareness is not fear, it's stewardship. Maybe that's what this entire conversation comes down to. Awareness is stewardship of your heart, of your mind, of your relationships, your spirit, your life. The truth is that we don't rise above what we refuse to acknowledge. And maybe awareness is the beginning of everything. Healing begins, boundaries begin there, growth begins there, freedom begins there, and the real change begins there too. So tonight, I want to leave you with a question, not a comfortable one, but maybe an important one. Where in your life have you already been shown the truth, but have not been willing to fully look at it yet? Maybe it's in habit, maybe it's in exhaustion, maybe it's in grief, maybe it's in a relationship, maybe it's in yourself. What is it? Don't run from it. Sit with it. Listen, because life whispers before it screams. And awareness teaches us to hear the whisper. So stay awake, stay honest, stay aware. Are you ready to look at it? And if you're ready to look at it, then check out all of our morning devotionals. Check out our podcast. We have a private men's community on the school platform. That's SKOOL, where men get together and we ask these questions. We become aware together. And if you're not aware, we will help you become aware. So check that out. That's on a school platform. You can go to northmancoaching.com and click join the brotherhood. If you need any one-on-one coaching, I'm available. Go to the website once again and book your free 60-minute session. And last but not least, if you are going through a divorce, part of being aware is, like I said earlier, is responding versus reacting. So I wrote a book. It's called The First 30
Men, divorce hits like a storm, leaving wreckage behind. This isn't about fixing the past. It's about forging the future. Start building the foundation for the man you're becoming. Take time to reflect and rise to each challenge. Get the free ebook, The First 30 Days. The first 30 days will help you survive the shock, stabilize your emotions, protect your peace and sanity, reclaim your strength. Northman Coaching and the Northman Brotherhood. Get your free ebook.
days. And that book will get you through the first 30 days of your separation or divorce to help you respond versus react. And if this book is used properly, it will save you. And if you can save yourself, you can save your marriage. On that note, besides the book that I recommended today, you guys should check out my Joel's podcast with his wife. It is called Sessions and Lessons. It is a great podcast. It is on all podcast platforms. They release new episodes every single Sunday and Wednesday. They are like 80s, 90s, self-help, morning talk show, banter. It really is interesting. It's very good. I enjoy it. And after you're done listening to those, his wife Glow Rosario has her own podcast, Solo Job, that's on every Friday that drops, and that is on also every podcast platform, and it is called Glowing Off Script. That is more self-help. They get into a lot of disorders and thought patterns, that kind of stuff. It's once again, just like the other one, it is really good. So check all those out. Check out the websites, guys. And yeah, I will see you guys next week for morning devotionals and for the next podcast. You guys have a wonderful evening, and I'll see you in June, actually. Have a good one, guys.
"7 days, no obligation, just 7 days for an opportunity to make yourself a better man. Divorce, hardships, we all have or are going through it. You are not alone. Join the Brotherhood, Northman Coaching on School. Stop by today and begin the journey. Shoulder to shoulder, brick by brick. Nothing to lose, everything to gain. You are worth it. Join today.